was created by the Jews Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster. Superman actually represented the Jewish experience among Gentiles. Superman, like Moses, has his parents send him away as a baby to escape peril. He becomes a man of an alien race, blending in amongst the Gentiles as a journalist, changing his name from the Hebrew-sounding Kal-El to Clark Kent. With race and genetics being off the table as an explanation for juvenile delinquency, Wortham and others blamed comic books, and parents listened. In 1954, a Senate subcommittee held televised hearings on comic books. Only one comic book publisher testified, the Jew William Gaines, who was the son of Max Gaines, the creator of the modern-day comic. The fallout of this testimony would shock the nation.
My name is William Gaines. I was the first publisher in these United States to publish horror comics. I'm responsible. I started them.
Gaines would walk himself into a trap during questioning, when he admits that he deliberately uses comics to combat racism and anti-Semitism.
You use the pages of your comic book to send across a message. In this case, it was against racial prejudice. Is that it?
That's right, sir.
You think, therefore, that you can get across a message to the kids through the medium of your magazine that would lessen racial prejudice. Is that it?
By specific effort, spelling it out very carefully so that the point won't be missed by any of the readers. I regret to admit that it still is missed by some readers, as well as Dr. Wortham. We have, I think, achieved some degree of success in combating anti-Semitism, anti-Negro feeling, and so forth.
Why do you say that you cannot, at the same time and in the same manner, use the pages of your magazine to get a message which would affect children adversely? That is, to have an effect upon their doing deeds of violence or sadism, whatever is depicted.
Because no message is being given to them. In other words, when we write a story with a message, it's deliberately written in such a way that the message, as I say, is spelled out carefully in the captions.
The next exchange would shoot the entire comic book industry in the foot.
There would be no limit, actually, to what you put into your magazine.
Only within the bounds of good taste.
Your own good taste and saleability.
Here seems to be your May 22nd issue, and there seems to be a man with a bloody axe holding a woman's head that's been severed from her body. You think that's in good taste?
Yes, sir, I do. With a cover of a horror comic. A cover in bad taste, for example, might be defined as holding the head a little higher so that the neck could be seen dripping from it, and moving the body over a little further so that the neck of the body could be seen to be bloody.
Well, you've got blood coming out of her mouth, you see.
A little.
And here's blood on the axe. I think most adults are shocked by that. This is the July one. Seems to be a man with a woman in the boat, and he's choking her to death here.
With a crowbar.
Is that in good taste, you think?
I think so.
The last exchange was plastered all over headlines, as parents were shocked and horrified that Gaines would nonchalantly call a severed head and a woman being choked to death as being in good taste. The comic book industry introduced a self-imposed comics code, where all comics had to be screened by the Comics Magazine Association of America and given a seal of approval. All of Gaines's titles folded except the most extreme of all, a comic called Mad, which he converted into a magazine to get around the regulation. Mad Magazine was created by Harvey Kurtzman, a Jew raised by communists. Mad is a subversive magazine featuring Jewish toilet humor and overt Jewish mockery of Gentile American culture, aimed at turning Gentile children against their parents. A Haaretz article in 2013 boasts that it is very much humor in a Jewish vein. 2 months after the Senate hearings, a dead homeless man washes up on the shores of New York, murdered by a gang of 4 teens called the Brooklyn Thrill Killers. The gang had been committing a crime spree for some time, attacking and torturing random people on the streets. They would wrap kerosene-soaked rags around a victim's arm or leg and set it on fire. The gang also stripped and flogged young women in parks at night. Jack Koslow, the leader, was a closeted homosexual and self-proclaimed white supremacist who was obsessed with Hitler. However, Koslow and the other 3 members of the gang were all Jewish. The psychiatrist Wortham went to interview Koslow. The leader stated that he was heavily influenced by an underground comic called Knights of Horror. The whipping of women in the comics sexually excited him, and he would occasionally dress up as a woman and self-flagellate. This wasn't enough, as he would start whipping actual women he found alone in New York, dressed as a vampire, also inspired by the comics. The whip he used was ordered from an advertisement in the back of a comic. The man behind the sadistic artwork in the Knights of Horror comic book would end up being none other than the co-creator of Superman, Joe Shuster. This wasn't revealed until decades later. Superman was first published by National Allied Publications, that would later become DC Comics. The owner was Harry Donenfeld, a Jewish immigrant who had been a pornographer in the 20s and 30s before going into comics. Donenfeld would make comics more extreme with titles such as Spicy Detective, Spicy Western, and Spicy Adventure. These were described by the National Organization of Decent Literature as wholly depraved and lascivious, and undoubtedly one of the deadliest plagues that ever threatened the moral life of a nation. The Comics Code tamed the industry to a great degree, but in its place, the plague of pornography would soon rise. The Senate Subcommittee on Juvenile Delinquency organized a new set of hearings, this time on the topic of obscene and pornographic materials. All of the subpoenaed were Jews, except one Italian, who was merely a printer of Knights of Horror. All of the pornographers pleaded the fifth before the subcommittee, except for one named Samuel Roth. 2 years later, Roth would be the defendant in the most earth-shaking Supreme Court obscenity decision in American history.
I proudly accept this great honor on behalf of my unbelievably talented staff of editors, writers, and artists who were vilified in the early 50s by a Senate subcommittee on juvenile delinquency and by other magazine publishers who claimed we had destroyed the youth of America. It has taken almost 40 years for our work to be recognized.
Samuel Roth immigrated to the U.S. from Eastern Europe in 1904. He would work odd jobs before going into publishing, where he would continually push the boundaries of what is considered acceptable. Throughout his adult life, he spent a total of 9 years in prison for distributing obscene material such as the D.H. Lawrence book Lady Chatterley's Lover and Ulysses. Roth even had a bizarre episode in 1934 when he became a self-hating Jew after losing his business to other Jews. He wrote and published a book called Jews Must Live, where he confirms many of the traditional anti-Jewish claims. He would write, "I am a Jew who has been brought to the point where he so loathes his people that he thinks in terms of their destruction. Jews had made a hideous swamp of Western civilization. Our major vice of old, as of today, is parasitism. Anti-Semitism is a primal instinct of mankind, which preserves the race against total destruction. The Jews have deserved all of their pogroms and persecutions. Jews had done nothing but stab America in the back, even though it is the most patient of the Western nations. There is blood in the eye of Uncle Sam as he looks across the ringside at the pudgy, smiling Uncle Moses." Roth denounced the book almost immediately after publishing, and the following year he began publishing obscene, sensational, and pornographic material almost exclusively. In 1956, Roth was indicted on 4 counts of obscenity and sentenced to 5 years imprisonment due to his periodical Good Times and the hardbound journal American Aphrodite. American Aphrodite had a story where characters masturbate a unicorn, and the unicorn kneels down and laps up its own semen. The case went to appeal in the Second Circuit Court, but the decision was affirmed by all judges. One Jewish judge, Jerome Frank, wrote a statement that the Supreme Court should finally weigh in on the matter of obscenity and set a new precedent. The Supreme Court would rule that obscenity was not protected by the First Amendment, but the definition of obscenity would be changed from the Hicklin test to the more broad Roth test. The Roth test defined obscenity as material where a dominant theme taken as a whole appeals to the prurient interest of the average person, applying contemporary community standards. Who is the average person? How does one measure community standards? The wording of the Roth test can be debated and picked apart in myriad different ways, and it is why it was by far the most significant decision in the history of American obscenity law. Roth would serve 5 years in prison, and by the time he was released in 1961, the things he was publishing were extremely tame to what was available now on the market. The Beat generation would reap the benefits of the Roth decision and would be the precursor to the sex, drugs, and rock and roll of the 60s and 70s. The Beats were all junkies, degenerates, and sexual deviants, such as the Jewish Allen Ginsberg. Ginsberg, raised by communists, was a lifelong homosexual and predator who was a vocal supporter of the North American Man-Boy Love Association. He once wrote that while laying next to his father in bed as a child, he would get an erection and rub against his father's leg. His poem titled Howl is the work of a deranged mind high on peyote. One line of the poem describes those who let themselves be f***ed in the ass by saintly motorcyclists. Jewish bookstore owner Lawrence Ferlinghetti received assurance from the ACLU that he would be defended for selling Howl. Ferlinghetti's store is raided 3 weeks before Roth versus United States. Jewish lawyer Jake Ehrlich, who the TV character Perry Mason was based on, takes the lead of the case. The prosecution would have to prove the work had no redeeming social or literary value, an impossible task. The defense brought 9 literary authorities to argue that it did have value. The charge was reversed, and Howl was found not to be obscene. Jewish publisher Barney Rossett would be emboldened by the Howl decision. He was a far-left radical who owned Grove Press, that published radical black authors such as Amiri Baraka, who wrote the line, "Rape the white girls, rape their fathers, cut the mothers' throats." Rossett publishes Lady Chatterley's Lover by D.H. Lawrence and the much more extreme Tropic of Cancer by Henry Miller. D.H. Lawrence was somewhat of an anti-Semite, calling Jews smug and elitist and the great haters of the human race. Although Lady Chatterley's Lover was explicit for its time, Lawrence was against outright pornography. In his essay, Pornography and Obscenity, he wrote, "But even I would censor genuine pornography rigorously. It would not be very difficult." Writing to author Aldous Huxley, Lawrence said, "You mustn't think I advocate perpetual sex in and out of season. Nothing nauseates me more than perpetual sex in and out of season. God forbid that I should be taken as urging loose sex activity." Lawrence died in 1930 and would surely be displeased the Jews used his books to clear a path for genuine pornography. Lady Chatterley's Lover was cleared in court and would become Grove Press's most successful publication, funding future legal battles. Tropic of Cancer by Henry Miller is an all-out assault on decency. Miller himself was not a Jew, but was an extreme Philosemite and was married to a Jewess. In the semi-autographical book, he fantasizes about having sex with her. "Oh, Tanya, where now is that warm of yours? There is a bone in my 6 inches long. I will ream out every wrinkle in your Tanya. After me, you can take on stallions, bulls, rams, drakes, St. Bernards. You can stuff toads, bats, lizards up your rectum. I will bite into your and spit out 2 franc pieces." Tropic of Cancer was taken to court in over 60 different obscenity trials. Grove Press, using the profits of Lady Chatterley's Lover, funded the vendors of every single one of these cases. The most significant of these trials was in Chicago, where the plaintiff and his lawyer, the defendant Rossett, the first expert witness, and the judge were all Jews. The judge, who was a friend of Rossett's father, cleared Tropic of Cancer. The Supreme Court would concur with the Chicago decision, and the book would be cleared nationwide. This would also result in the Illinois Supreme Court reversal of another obscenity conviction, that of Jewish comedian Lenny Bruce. Bruce, born Alfred Leonard Schneider, would have disgusting bits such as, "A kid looks up at his father and says, 'What's a degenerate?' The father says, 'Shut up, kid, and keep sucking.'" Bruce was arrested at least 8 times for obscenity, drugs, and other offenses. He would be sentenced to 4 months in prison, but instead of serving, he would jump bail and go to San Francisco. He died at age 40, falling off of his toilet naked with a needle sticking out of his arm. Bruce paved the way for all dirty comedians, just as the Jew Howard Stern would break down all decency in radio.